Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our January 6th, 2025 first meeting of the year. This is our strategic planning meeting. It's 9 o'clock. And please let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present. And we will go ahead and get started with Jason and Randy.
Good morning, commissioners. We have the in front of you, you're going to have the sales tax report. This is for monies received in December, which of course is for sales in October. So this is leading into the Christmas season. So we'll let Jason talk about this one.
Good morning. Should be pretty short and sweet. Finally, it's not terrible news, so which is surprising because normally Randy would give the good news. He always sticks me with the bad ones. So for October activity for December collections, we collected about 6.9 million. And year to date, about 78.2 million. So for December's collections, we were 4.6% higher over the same period last year. But year to date, we're 1% higher than we were for last year. So still short of our mark. They budgeted 2%, but pretty darn close. The past couple months, the soft landing that people had forecasted, it seems to been coming into play. So it doesn't seem as dire as it has in the past. Next slide. So this is just a chart showing the average sales tax growth, the historical average going back to 2000. So this doesn't include 2024. It'll be a couple months before we have those figures because of the lag in collections. But historically 4.01%. As you can see, in the last 2 bars or columns, I should say, on the right, it's showing a little bit of an increase. As far as the rolling average, we went from 0.6% growth to 1% growth over the past 2 months for the rolling average.
You think that's because of the election?
This is based on October activity.
Okay.
So
I think what we did see this year, and I think maybe we'll get to it in a little bit, but Christmas sales were earlier this year. December was a very light month for retailers. I know we were just talking in the office, Costco was down significantly in December over normal. So I think we saw a push that moved up the Christmas season into October, November. So I expect we'll probably still see a good November. And then I think we'll see a lighter than normal December's, if is what we're thinking we're going to see here coming in.
So I know nationally they were talking about an uptick in retail sales from what they projected for retailers in terms of, as opposed to what they were actually experiencing at the cash register and stuff. So my comment wasn't meant to be humorous. It was just a reflection of, has there been a change in attitude?
I think there was some positive sentiment that probably resulted from that. But there's other concerns we have, which Jason will go into here also.
to your point, Commissioner, there is
Just a second.
Jason, when we look at the rough 4% average, I mean, we've had highs that have been more than double that. I mean, we've been around, have you like run like the median or something? I'm just wondering what is, I mean, so sometimes the average can be misleading when you have such huge swings. I mean,
right.
when someone is like, where are we usually at as far as, I don't want to use average because sometimes the average can just be so misleading because you look at November of 22, we're at 9.3. I mean, that was huge, but
it is misleading if you look at it like on a singular year, right? Obviously, right? Like if you had a lake and the average, the depth was 4 feet, but you were stuck on the part that was 20 feet, that's gonna suck.
yeah.
I feel 4% is pretty good. I mean, we're in a period right now where we're likely not going to be hitting that 4% average anytime soon. At least that's what we're.
I would say you're probably typically between the 3% and 4%.
Okay.
The 4%, I did test it. It is like even compounding, it works out at 4%.
Okay.
But I was thinking the number sounded high also.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at that, but I would say a typical year, you're probably in the 3% area.
Okay.
We're in that trough right now. And there's reasons that Jason will explain that give us concern for continuing in that.
To Commissioner French's point when he asked the question earlier, there has been a lot of reporting, but consumer optimism is really high right now. Where they feel that their financial position at this point in time next year will be better than it is this year. At least that's, according to a lot of the polls, like the Fed. So that is good. So with the optimism being higher, people are obviously more likely to spend because they're not as concerned. Whether or not they're right, I don't see, but at least they're spending, they spent in October, which is good.
Oh, and so just to be sure I understand the slide, so 2000 to 2023 is 4%, but you're just showing us November 22 to December 24.
Correct. Yeah, just so it
Okay.
doesn't get the data's not
All right,
noisy.
but that 4% is over that 23-year period.
Correct.
Okay.
Next slide. Okay, so for the New York Fed's Center for Microeconomic Data, they use hard data and they use polling. So both qualitative, quantitative, so it's pretty reliable. For new foreclosures and bankruptcy filings, it's dropped from Q3 of 24 over Q2 of 24. So that's huge. There was a 12% reduction in the amount of new foreclosures and a 7% reduction in the amount of new bankruptcies. But it has been trending higher, but it finally is slowed down a little bit. On the next, sorry, not the next slide, Ron. The next chart, there is, so that part, the first chart was good, right? So a decrease in foreclosures, decrease in bankruptcies. But then on the very next chart, you do see that the amount of debt that's going into some stage of delinquency is increasing. So when from 3.2% to 3.5% over the prior quarter. So a higher number of delinquencies, and also the HELOC balances or home equity lines of credit those are also increasing. So people are relying more on their equity. And that could be partly because of confidence, because they want to go and spend because they're not worried about it, or it could be they don't have another source of funds. So not quite sure.
On that chart on the left, though, where we talked about, the increase in bankruptcies has gone down, but it's still an increase. So it just means instead of increasing at 20%, we're increasing at 7%, but it's still an increase in bankruptcies.
Next slide. This chart here shows the dollar amounts of available credit, the dollar amounts of credit limit, and the dollar amounts of balances. So on the very top line, that's the amount of credit limits. And the very bottom line, the red line, is the amount of the balances. The black line in the middle is the dollar amount of the available credit. So from Q3 23 to Q3 24, balances went up, 0.9 trillion, and limits went up 0.27 trillion. So the amount of available credit also increased, and part of that, a good amount of that is likely due to people with much higher incomes that have availability for much higher credit limits. So people that are in the lower income brackets are not experiencing that, right? A lot of them are using up more credit.
Yeah,
than
they have less capacity right now. So that's our concern, is that when we came out of the free money period, people kept spending and they used their credit card balance to do that. Yes, depending on your income level, you may have more capacity, but you're not using that capacity. But the people that are using it, we don't see them increasing their capacity as much.
Next slide. Okay, for the sales tax sectors, finally, we don't have as many that are in the red. So the retail trade sector is up 1% year over year. Construction, even though it shows a yellow, it's down 4% year over year, but that is definitely an improvement over has been past 6 months. So it's finally starting to trend upward. So still have yellow for a little bit of caution. Accommodation and food services sector, same, negative 4% year over year, but it is improving. So it's good. Next slide. For the construction sectors, the non-residential building sector is still, even though it is improving modestly, it is still down 28% year over year, where residential building is only down 1%. Residential buildings is showing an uptick, which is good. The graph on the right shows the architecture billing index stats. We had 20 months of decline in the amount of billings. In October, it finally showed an uptick, so that was good. And then it went back down just a hair for November, but that's still definitely better. That's a good indicator to show what people have in the queue for construction projects.
The non-residential building, wouldn't that also be reflective of the fact that none of the school bond levies passed? And so there really isn't a lot of school construction, which is a big sales tax generator from the construction segment.
Schools are very large.
Yeah.
Next slide. The first little bit of green we've had in slides in probably almost a year. New car dealers are up about 5% year to date. Used vehicles are down 9% year to date, but that's still an improvement over where it has been. Other motor vehicle dealers down 12% year to date, but that is a huge improvement over where it has been this year. And auto repairs and maintenance actually dropped a little bit. It's a good sign because it means people are spending more on newer vehicles as opposed to repairing their existing vehicles. But that's up 2% year to date. Next slide. These are about even, not a ton of changes from the prior month, but full service restaurants up 1% year to date. Which, if you're looking at that with the food costs going up as much for the restaurants, it means they're probably having less ticket sales, but the prices have just gone up. So they're definitely still struggling. Same with drinking places, so up 2%. The limited service restaurants, like casual dining, up 3%, and the snacks and non-alcoholic beverages, like coffee shops, things like that, is still down 34% year to date, but that's because of a big drop we had to a reporting issue early in the year. And last slide. So just to recap, so 6.9 million for December. So again, that was a really good month for us, 4.6% over the prior year. Year to date, 78.2, so 1% over where we were year to date last year. The downside risk for sales tax report is if people continue to spend more cautiously because they need to spend more on non-taxable goods like services and rents and things like that, then sales tax could go down. If there are layoffs, if the layoffs continue, that obviously will impact it. The upside risk is still anticipating maybe 2 small Federal Reserve cuts maybe this year, which does usually help the spending as the interest rates reduce. The optimism, like we talked about earlier, is up. So that's definitely a good thing, right? People start spending more money as they feel more comfortable. And then one fact that I saw today that's not on the slide is one thing that's good for Spokane in particular is U-Haul just came out with a list of the top move to areas, right? So where someone's rented a vehicle from another area and then dropping it out here and not leaving. We were ranked 24th for a metro area, so which is really good. So unless the U-Hauls are just getting stolen here and they just can't return them. But you never know, but it is a good sign.
Would you be able to send that out to us, the list?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'll send it, so let's get back.
Any other, how?
Yep.
If we're 24, who's the other ones around us?
Yep, I'll send it, just a little bit,
Perfect, thank you.
and that's it.
Any other questions for Jason? It is a little bit better, it is.
I know, finally. I didn't bring a popper next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
All
this
those
is all,
last minute shoppers like
Yeah.
myself.
again, based on October. you said.
Correct,
Yes.
based on October activity.
Okay.
So we anticipate, I think that November should still be good is what we're hearing.
Right.
Okay.
And then maybe a slowdown for, yeah, February elections. Thank you guys, happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Okay, next what's gonna take us to George and Chris.
Morning, everyone. Welcome back from the holidays. We wanted to share with you some work that we've been doing to help you all, as well as the constituents out with some of the work that we're doing around homelessness. So this really this idea sparked as you all have had some folks come and visit your legislative meetings and kind of challenge some of the work that we are or are not doing with the with our homeless services. And one more. And so we figured, what can we do to help empower you all with some information so that as folks reach out and have a conversation, that you've got something that's just kind of a quick fact sheet to go to. We've heard a lot about the number of emergency shelter beds. One of the things that we've talked about in our shop is the challenge of when we're so hyper focused on emergency sheltering, then we invest exclusively in emergency sheltering. And we're in a situation where we can't get out of homelessness because everything's in emergency sheltering. So putting something out there that has a graphic associated with it that shows where our investments are, where they're coming from. So really, we just want to run this by you all as a thought exercise. Is this something that you all see as of value? I think Commissioner Kearns, a few weeks back, you had the kind of a rebuttal to one of the comments that were made, and thinking this could be a great opportunity to have just next to Gina or Ron or whoever, a stack of flyers that say, if you would like more information about what Spokane County is doing around homeless services, there's a form up there that you're happy to take that with you and study. And if you have more questions, please reach out to us. One of the other things that we've done with this is partnered with the city of Spokane Valley on this. So we met with their team and their communications officer to have a discussion about how can we have kind of a joint with the county really shouldering a lot of the investments in homeless services out of the city of Spokane Valley. And so this is what we've come up with. We've got a few QR codes and a few other information pieces in there that, like the continuum of care, the city and that investment, what they're responsible for as a region. So Chris, I don't know, anything else that you'd like to add to this?
I think the one thing I would add is on kind of the mid-page left-hand section of that front page. I feel like if this is something that we're interested in pursuing, this is a fantastic opportunity for y'all as the elected officials to give guidance or almost goals to the kind of the biennial funding moving forward. So if, for instance, this looked a little bit different with a couple of different goals provided by y'all, and we take that to the advisory committee and say, here is the overall kind of framework of what we're looking to do here. So when we're handing out something like this, it's showing not only the facts of what we're doing, but here are the goals. Here's what we're really invested in doing. So I think that could be really powerful as well, showing we can't do everything. So showing where we're operating, and then also that allows us to talk with the city a little bit, and if they're focusing on a certain area as well. So I would also leave y'all with that as an opportunity to potentially come up with goals or a commonality on where we're looking to go with the next year of biennial funding, which starts in July 1st of 2025.
And we'll be coming back to you all at your next study session later this month to have more of a conversation about the 1 through 5 and what does that look like. So like to just kind of prime the pump on that. So
So do these numbers include the numbers that Pat has out Veteran Services?
No,
No,
they do not.
this is exclusively what comes through our department as well as the city of the valley.
Okay. You might want to consider whether you want to add Veteran Services in here or not. I know that they do an incredible amount of outreach to veterans that are homeless, as well as other services and stuff. And so I think it would just help enhance some of the activities that we're doing here at the county. I mean, Vet Services is a county department.
And not to be included on this worksheet, but could you make sure, can you email out to all five of us? So we all have that graph that you had at the last regional homeless meeting, that the grid that showed the $50 million per biennium. This makes sense, just so we all have that. It was interesting to see by jurisdiction, the breakdown and where the funding streams are coming from.
And that's, I think what you're referring to is the tool that we've kind of created to kind of show the different funding pools and.
Yep.
And that's kind of that's a hard to understand piece, and that is what reflected in this kind of right hand side back. So I'll be sure to email to everyone.
So the roundtable where we've been talking about how to work regionally to decrease homelessness. I think we're trying to schedule another meeting for the end of January. Do you see that as if you were to come back to us with looking at some of these different focus areas? My question will always be, well, obviously, city's also funding a lot of these. It'd be interesting to see, is that what you guys were working on with that tool, that you can actually show how much as a region we're putting into emergency shelter versus prevention versus, rapid rehousing, et cetera?
Yes. With accurate information coming from the city and the COC, we'd be able to kind of put everything side by side to see where those investments are going.
So will you guys be presenting more on that grid or that spreadsheet then at the next meeting? Would you be able to do that?
Probably not at the next meeting,
Okay.
the end of this month, but the following one.
Cause that would, for me, it's like, obviously, folks who are experiencing homelessness are all over the county. They are getting services from a variety of different organizations. Counties funding those organizations, the city through the continuum of care. So this is excellent. I think you guys did a great job on this. I think that this will be good to share with folks who wonder, well, what's the county doing? So this is really helpful. But then hopefully we can move towards an actual, what is the region doing?
Yep.
Because these numbers are a lot bigger, right? When you look at the whole, like what you were saying, Commissioner Kearns, like there's a lot of investment happening, but is it happening in the right places? So I would love to get feedback on like where we might maybe want to prioritize our dollars, but it's only in the context of what else is being funded, right? So I guess I would like to see more of that bigger picture before I could give you feedback on, oh gosh, we need to do more with prevention. I also know there's been some new big investments. Like I heard the Bezos Fund made a big investment in Family Promise to work on prevention. Really like keeping people housed, keeping families housed, rather than waiting until they're unhoused and then trying to help them. So I'm excited to learn more about all those other investments happening kind of from the private side too. So that's good news.
George, we can't get your QR code to work here
Uh-oh.
with our phones. I think it might be a little too small on the sheet.
Which one?
The QR code, the one that says view homeless data dashboard.
Bigger.
Oh, this one might be the same. This one.
What's that?
Oh, okay. We got QR code.
Uh-oh. And this
Otherwise,
speaks
we
to the,
have
this one's the
technological
health district.
confidence.
Is that the
Oh,
call?
I can't get
I will look into that.
Make them bigger.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Is this something that could be placed as like a just a side PDF or clickable on the homeless dashboard? for those who might be interested in what the county is doing, or?
I think absolutely.
If you blow it up on your computer screen in our packet. Yeah. Yeah,
We need
it's
more
the
high definition
County Health
printers.
Insights.
Yeah, I think absolutely that's something that we can do as we start to, we really wanted to develop something that was empowering to you all as commissioners. When you have constituents coming to you, as well as the city of the valley, they end up running into similar issues with their council members and administrators. So yeah, really wanting to do a run with you all on this, and then bring the city in so that we can get more of that comprehensive piece. This is also like one pillar that we're piloting, because we also want to give this to you for community development as well as affordable housing, so that you've got really kind of those one pagers depending on the constituents and the questions that they have relating to this field.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Commissioner Jordan and then to Pat.
I just want to say this is a really good tool, so thanks for the work on this. I think it's really informative, love the charts. And I think it's useful to see the emergency number of beds and the breakdown, particularly in winter when that's a lot of the questions that we're getting. Just on the substance of it, 5.4 million for prevention. Seems like that's a really good way to, a significant pillar of any strategy would be to try to prevent people from falling into the response system in the first place. Are we worried over the next few years about those funding streams becoming less plentiful?
Yes.
And what is that? What are the details of that? Is that state funding?
Yeah, you can see the large proportion of our pie is state funded,
Yeah.
and there was a significant investment in the current biennium that we're in into homeless prevention. Commerce has let us know that we should anticipate a 20% reduction in our consolidated homeless grant. So I think we will see a reduction in prevention. But I think that's one of the things as we work with you all and kind of how do we communicate the wishes of the commissioners to our advisory committee to make sure that we're checking as we make those investments and recommendations.
Pat.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Sure. I just wanted to provide a little bit more background on the fact sheet. It has been a great collaboration with the City of the Valley, who helped get some of the initial ideas on the paper. A little bit more just about the purpose. I think George and Chris did a nice job there. This could be designed for a more technical audience, something like service providers, or it could be designed for the more general public. So the reason I bring that up is the main purpose of a fact sheet, just to be easy to understand, kind of at a glance, really high level, concise information. I think that's why we link to the resource to George's department's website. People want to find more information about individual programs. But I could see this being expanded in the future, and we'll be working with them if they need assistance putting the other fact sheets together. But generally, I think the goal here has been accomplished, just concise, essential information about what the county and the valley are doing together with the plug for the information for the COC. So I know I just heard some feedback, some good ideas. I think those can be incorporated in other places. But this is something I think the commissioners, as George said, can use either digitally and circulate, have on your individual commissioner pages if you're working a lot in this area, or something that could be printed out and taken to meetings as a leave behind, because it really does try to encapsulate all of those key facts about our program. So anyhow, I just wanted to jump in and add a little bit from the communications perspective. Thanks.
Thank you.
This might be way too much to get a hold of, but are you able to go into HMIS and actually pull of the X number of individuals assisted in the county and the valley, like how many remain housed after, there's like those benchmarks after a year or 2 years. Are you able to pull that out for this population specifically? Because I know I get a lot of questions okay, it's great that you're doing all this funding, but are you making an impact? Are people actually remaining housed, staying housed, getting the help that they need?
I would say that recidivism would be a really hard metric to pull out. I think that's something that they're working at over at the city. What really becomes difficult there is someone has to come back into the program and have that check-in point in HMIS to indicate whether or not they came back in, whether with it.
Right, it's easier, like Family Promise as an organization
Correct.
can track people that come through their doors. But on the system level, it's a little bit more complex.
Right, that there would be, you could look at folks coming back into programs and whether or not they had another one of those instances within the last 24
They'd
months.
have to check back in HMIS.
Exactly, and that's not really happening. So while I think that's something that HMIS can do down the road, I don't believe HMIS is up to that right now.
Something to work on. All right.
And I'll add that we just recently received access to HMIS so that we're able to go and do more data management and everything. So that's a huge step forward for Chris and his portfolio. So we'll be exploring more things as we get up to speed on analyzing the data and really seeing what our metrics look like locally.
And what we've heard from y'all is that you would like to see outcomes and where these funds are going. And so that's something that we're really working on. And then in a couple of weeks, we will be coming back with a little bit of that reduction and what that looks like and what percentages maybe we should be working on in those different intervention types. So a little bit more factual data to bring back to you guys that may inform these 5 pillars or the investments made in the next 2 years.
Pat.
I was just gonna add, when we first met a few weeks ago, it sounded like the department didn't have access to HMIS. And I think just having that data set available, as Commissioner Waldron mentioned, now that we have that, there might be some additional insights that we can gather for that. The dashboard that the city, the county, and SRHD has a lot of information on demographics. But for anybody who's asking about funding and what the priorities of the county are or have been, or wants to talk about what they should be, I think this particular document's a great starting point. It doesn't answer all of those policy questions that maybe the Homeless Coalition and others are asking or advocating for, but it does provide that base level of information. So if somebody says, well, the county doesn't spend anything on homelessness programs, or the county's not serving, or isn't funding any beds, this is an immediate, pull this out and definitely have a copy with you so you can speak to those points.
So I remember, Commissioner Cuny, that when we were talking about priorities and RFPs, that you had suggested last year, like really tightening up the expectations around sharing back with us for those who receive these funds, what the impact, certain metrics. So what is the time frame for getting feedback to you around maybe updating language in the RFP, updating some of our priorities about where we want to put most, some of our dollars? What time frame do we have to get that lined up with you?
So our current request for proposal for this next program year concludes on the 15th of this month, so next week. Chris will be taking all of the applications that come in through the Homeless Services portfolio. He'll be taking that to the advisory committee at their March meeting. So we're going to break up the recommendations into 2 waves. So affordable housing, community development will go before the advisory committee in February, and then homeless services. It's a bigger piece, and we want to make sure that the advisory committee is giving appropriate time to review and to become familiar with those applications. We'd love to be able to bring something to the advisory committee specifically in the homeless services by their March meeting. So that's the 2nd Thursday in March. That will give us some guiding principles from you all, so that when we bring the recommendations to you, it's been through the filter of some of those guiding principles that you've assigned to us going into the deliberations.
So we would still be able to, in the contracts with these different organizations, require certain data to be shared back?
Yes.
It's not too late to do that, even though it might not have been. The RFP was really just propose in these areas what you could do.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, and we would absolutely, if you guys have goals of what we should be pulling out from the contracts, we can actually put those into the contracts. We haven't even looked at the applications yet, and I'll be coming back in the next couple of weeks again to present what we anticipate the funding levels to look like, the current outcomes are with our current funding levels, and whether you guys would like to modify that at all.
So, but we did put some metrics in our contracts.
They always have metrics. It's more, we haven't had the tools to enforce to the level that we would,
Because
that
we're
we would
putting it into
expect.
HMN.
correct. So we
Which we
get,
don't have the access to.
and we get reports from them, but we have not in the past had the ability to go and validate and ensure that those are as accurate as we'd like them to be.
So one of the questions is with Salvation Army, with the Way Out Shelter, because we were pretty heavy in helping get that up and going.
Purchase.
Well, we purchased the building. We've committed to $500,000, I think, a year for so many years, and I think that's gonna be running out. So 2025 or 2026?
End of 26, I
End of
believe.
26, okay, so that's already still set because, and I just took a tour here recently or met with the Salvation Army, and it just seems like, they're doing what we want them to do with those funds. They're housing the people, they're getting them the help they need, and they're getting them into housing after and getting them back into the community. Which is, one of the goals of what that is. So, okay, glad to know it's through 2026 because, it's trying to figure out, as the funds, so the committee already knows that that's committed. Correct. Yes.
They're currently under contract, so that would be if we were to take something and add it to that contract, that would be an amendment. But to your point, there are already metrics in those contracts that we can now flush out a little bit, present to you, other than doing a walking tour. What are the actual outcomes and metrics that happened in January, the last quarter, which we should be a couple weeks out from getting to y'all.
Commissioner French.
On the shelters and other programs that we're funding, do we have provisions with regard to barrier-free access to the shelter, to the programs, or not?
Mostly, yes. So a big asterisk in most of this funding. So if you see the state funding, CHG funds coming from us, that is a no barrier or low barrier requirement to all of these intervention types, but specifically to shelters. So a good example would be a sobriety could not be required at any of the shelters that we fund. If that's a requirement, then we could fund that shelter. Other types of barriers like that would prohibit us from funding that with CHG. We could fund those types of programs with document reporting fee funds, HHAA. But again, that's more a direction from the Board of County Commissioners. That's not something we would do.
So the funds we get from the state and the feds are barrier-free,
Correct.
but the funds that we have from the county could say, you've got to commit to some kind of program, some kind of restorative effort. You just can't come in drunk and house you.
I would say that the county funds are a little bit more flexible to work with programs that otherwise may not be funded from state funds. So yes.
Madam Chair, could I just ask, what was the funding source for the Way Out Shelter?
It's from HHAA, so document reporting fees.
Oh, okay.
So again, flexible funding. So the metrics that they have been providing back to us, they have been providing that information, but in kind of hard copy forms, not something that we can validate and verify. So that's something that we're able to look at now in HMIS and get them up to speed. If they are not putting information into the system, we can easily find that out, get them up to speed.
I was just gonna make a note that at the next regional homeless roundtable meeting, Commerce is gonna come and give a presentation on the new state 5-year plan to end homelessness, which has a lot more of an emphasis as I understand it, on prevention. But yet, we're potentially gonna see a drop in funding, but it'll be interesting to hear from Commerce about the new plan and how they anticipate, you know, supporting different efforts across the state, so.
And doesn't the COC come up with anyone as well?
Yeah, they've got a draft right now that they're working on.
Is there a public comment period or an opportunity for
Seen this for a
people?
long time,
The
so-
last 5-year plan.
Yeah.
Is there a way to get people to be able to weigh in on that before it's completed?
Yeah, so it's been going through the COC and their committees, but we can get you more information on kind of where that's at in the process and when those comment periods will be.
Okay. Thanks.
Lastly, I just wanted to acknowledge Jill from the city of Spokane Valley, their public information officer who was kind of an architect here in putting this together. So Jill, if you're listening, thank you on behalf of our team for all of your work here. And thank you, Pat, for your guidance as well.
No, I think it was a great collaboration, and the city of Spokane Valley, so. Thank you very much, appreciate it, because I think it is one of those questions we keep getting. So it is nice just to have this to hand out to say, no, this is what we're doing, and I think, you know, and I don't know how we look at it from the city of Spokane's side versus ours, which, you know, Commissioner Waldorf was kind of talking about how we do that. But in my time here, we've put more of our money into kind of affordable housing options and trying to get that versus the emergency sheltering side, because we're letting the city of Spokane do the emergency sheltering side. And so like you said, you can't put it all in emergency sheltering, otherwise you have nothing to get people out of it. So
Well, this is still a pretty big chunk, still goes to emergency shelter.
yes, so I mean, which is interesting, but that's.
And one important note there is none of this includes CDBG homes, some of our other funding sources that go specifically to affordable housing. This is only our homeless services portfolio. So we've got 3 pillars within the department. This is one of those.
So you may want to look at adding those others. You know, and maybe it's not part of this one, but it's another sheet that shows the additional things that we're doing.
Cause it would be helpful, yeah.
Yeah.
Affordable housing and then like all the different investments we made in 2023, 2024.
Yeah, and that's what we're thinking is having them as separate so that we're really highlighting it and we don't get lost.
Right.
Too much information on one page.
Yeah, and we can be showing each sheet could be its own pillar, as you were saying. So I think that'd be great, because I think it does show how much effort we are putting into that we're not seeing from our other municipalities as much. You know, I think we're really, from what I've known, the county's kind of the forefront of that. So, and I guess I may be wrong, I don't know. So it'd be good to know.
Well, and that would include projects like Highland Village and things like that too, I would assume.
I would think so.
Yes, absolutely. So our current program year that we're in, we have over $10 million invested into affordable housing that's outside of what you're seeing on the sheet of paper.
Even like our Phoenix apartments and, you know, just all of those that, you know, is not necessarily part of your grid. I think the Phoenix apartments are part of Justin's.
Yep.
But that's still all about transitional housing, correct?
Yep.
So yeah, so I mean, I think that would be helpful for us to see the whole picture. And so having you guys work together on that would be great.
Yep.
Because I think Justin's spending dollars as well in emergency. Like with outreach teams and all of that, and is that included in here?
No.
Okay, so I think that's part of what we need to get is, I understand you're 2 separate departments at this point in time, but it's like, but we still have to have you working together to show us that whole picture.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand how much the county does around, you know, the mental health and people coming out of institutions, and it's huge, really.
Yeah. So I think that would be one of the things is, as we look at what we're saying our goals are, we need to know in mind kind of what's going on, what's happening. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Great job. Okay, that takes us to the end of what we have to, on our printed agenda, but we have,
Madam Chair, I think we need to add to our agenda today at least a discussion on appointment of the vacancy of our treasurer.
okay. So yes, which we couldn't make, we couldn't put it on the agenda ahead of time because we didn't know when a new speaker was going to be placed in the House of Representatives to then determine that congressmen and women would be sworn in.
And so we can have the discussion today. We have a resolution that's ready to go to appoint a interim and also we can do that today or tomorrow at the legislative session. Either way, after the discussion before a final action, it'll require an opportunity for public comment. I think the draft resolution is in their emails. Gina, did we send that out to everybody for review?
So if we discuss it today, can it be on the agenda for tomorrow at 2 o'clock
Or there could be a final action today.
okay. I guess,
The,
yeah.
the big question that we haven't, did the resignation get submitted to all 5 county commissioners?
Yeah.
Yes, it was, or no, it was not?
No,
I don't think I got it.
I don't think I haven't.
You didn't get it?
I don't think so. When did it
No.
come?
Then it was distributed on a need-to-know basis, I guess.
So my understanding is, at the point that the swearing in occurred is when he has to resign. So we will try to get a formal document from him. But I believe the swearing in occurred on the 4th.
Third.
Madam Chair,
They were sworn.
Yeah, he was sworn in on the 3rd and it was on C-SPAN, wasn't it?
Okay.
Madam Chair, a couple things for the board to know. Under the law, a person can hold 2 appointed positions at the same time. And so there's nothing that would have necessarily prohibited the treasurer from holding his position as the treasurer and also a representative in Congress. In this particular case, pardon me,
Yeah, but.
That's state law, that's not federal law.
what even the federal law doesn't prohibit that,
But
Commissioner
he
French.
cannot receive a paycheck from anywhere other than the
Federal government.
Yeah.
government.
Okay, that's the first question. Second question is, under the law, a vacancy occurs on the date that the person puts in his or her letter submitted to the legislative authority. And I said letter, it could be in the form of an email, a text message, or a formal letter. And so, Commissioner CUNY, I have not seen the text of the treasurer.
I did receive a text.
Thank you.
But it was on my personal phone, not on my work phone. So I will forward that
Thank
to my work phone, so it's there. So would that be considered enough since it came to the chair of the board?
Next question, may I answer it in this way, Commissioner? So the fact that it was sent to your personal emails, board members, is still a public record. Remember, anything sent to your personal emails is a public record if it deals with county business. So in that regard, that is a public record. And so I would appreciate seeing a copy of that.
Yes.
The law says that when someone resigns and they're a partisan position, they submit their letter of resignation to the legislative body. So the term legislative body is not defined. I would pro-offer that if you send it to a majority of the county commissioners on their private email, that probably satisfies the particular position in this case. Next question is, what is the effective date of the resignation? So I need to see that, if you will, Commissioner CUNY, because it's my understanding that he resigned the day he was sworn into Congress, and he was sworn in on Friday, if I recall, board members. Please, and I can be corrected on that.
He was sworn in on Thursday.
Oh, Thursday, excuse me,
No.
Commissioner French.
January 3rd
Oh,
is when
on
all
Thursday.
members were sworn
Yeah,
in, was
Thursday.
Friday.
Friday.
And And
Friday.
this text says effective January 4th.
Okay,
Yes.
so Commissioner Cuny, thank you for sharing that with me. I'm going to print that document off and attach it to whatever you do. So- So the appointment will be effective, board members, on Saturday, January 4th, 2025. And so I'm gonna make it effective at, if you will, 12:01 a.m. Next question, board members. State law was amended in 1981. Before 1981, the law didn't address the appointment of any interim person to fill the vacancy until the board formally acts to appoint someone. And so under this particular statute, if the board opts to appoint someone to act in an interim basis, you can only appoint individuals who are deputies or employees in the office at the time the vacancy occurs. So that's the next thing you need to know. And so, in answer to your question, Commissioner Cuny, if I see that document, I can take the resolution I've got and clean it up a little bit to make the appointment effective on Saturday, January 5th, if I'm
The
Fourth.
4th.
4th.
Saturday
Okay.
the 4th.
Next question, board members. I want to indicate that the board previously has appointed an interim to act when an elected official has resigned. In particular, this was done when the Spokane County Clerk, Tom Falquist, resigned his position, and the Board of County Commissioners at that point in time did appoint Chief Deputy, if you will, Gary Berg, to act in an interim basis for appointment. Finally, I want to let you know that if the board decides to move in the direction of appointing someone to fill this vacancy in the interim position, we'll talk about that in a minute, that he or she should receive the salary of the treasurer. I don't care who it is in the office who you appoint, but their salary for this interim timeframe should be bumped up to that of the treasurer because they're acting in that capacity. So the board have any questions about the appointment to fill the interim position?
Just out of curiosity, if that's an option that the board has to appoint an interim, but we don't have to, is that, just curious how the law works.
Commissioner Jordan, you always ask interesting questions. So this is a unique question. I would look to Mr. Folsom, but it would be the recommendation of legal counsel that we do make an interim appointment because it makes the office flow and then no one can really question the activities of the treasurer's office. But I will tell you from a legal perspective, the law says you may appoint. And so the interesting issue here is if you didn't appoint, I could come up with a strong argument that the chief deputy treasurer can act in a de facto capacity as the treasurer if someone challenged what he or she is doing. But it would be my recommendation, board members, and I think Matt and I have talked about this, that we do make an appointment because I don't want anyone questioning the unique responsibilities of the treasurer because he's involved in, he's part of the investment and all that kind of stuff.
No.
Does that answer that question, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you.
I knew
Makes sense for a good recommendation from legal.
And I would just say with the investments and all of that are ongoing all the time, it's important to have somebody who's actually, I think, interim instead of just the chief deputy. Having been the chief deputy for Vicky and understanding that role, I think having, because of the treasurer's office being over almost $1 billion, it's important to have them someone as the acting interim until the appointment occurs.
But I think it's also important because of all the contracts with all the other outside agencies. I don't know which one of those agencies are specific to the treasurer as opposed to an appointed or some other kind of de facto position and stuff. So I would agree with the chair that we should take care of it today.
And so may I make one other comment, Madam Chair? Just to be sure the board understands it. in the resolution that I prepared with blank name and some other things, you hold the position, they hold this interim position until the Board of County Commissioners appoint someone to fill the vacancy, as the case might be. And I think Matt, if you want to talk about that, to filling the vacancy in the elected position, we're glad to do that.
So it's not the appointment, it's them taking their oath of office.
Your question, good question, Commissioner French. Your question is, Mr. Macio, if the when the Board of County Commissioners ultimately appoints one of three names submitted by the Republican Party, when does this person hold his office? And you know, Commissioner French, I have not looked at that issue. I put in the resolution the exact language in the statute, so hopefully that doesn't come up. But when your point is well taken. As you both know, because you just took your oaths of office, several of you, you've got to take the oath of office, and that's when the position starts.
Right.
So, Commissioner CUNY, I don't know if you want the discussion about filling the vacancy now. I know that Mr. Folsom is ready to talk about it, or you just want to look at the interim position?
Well, I think it's two things. I think we need to just either agree that the interim position is the way to go, and then I think it's, yes, seeing who we agree that it's the person to fill that position. So, and I think since the resignation happened on Saturday, and I know the chief deputy could act in de facto fashion, but I think since we know this, it'd just be easier to get it accomplished. So first, is everyone okay doing an interim acting, or is that the title we're using?
I'm Madam Chair, I'm looking at the clerk for a moment. Can you please pull up the resolution, Madam Clerk, that I sent to you, and can you forward it to all the board members? They have it, Madam Chair, thank.
Yeah,
And-
she emailed
And there's
it. It's in
unique
our-
language in there. What's the,
I'm just, yeah.
The title of the resolution says, in a matter of appointing an acting official to perform all necessary duties in the Spokane County Treasurer's office until a successor is either elected or appointed as provided by law. So
And Commissioner
acting
Kearns,
official.
can you please go down to the now therefore at the end of it? I'm sorry, Madam Chair, because the terminology is very important.
Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of County Commissioners of Spokane County, Washington pursuant to RCW 36 blah, blah, blah. The board does hereby appoint effective, it's just the dates, as the acting official of the Spokane County Treasurer's office to perform the necessary duties.
Thank you, Commissioner Kearns. Acting official, Madam Chair, is the correct terminology from the RCW.
The treasurer's office.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I understand that the clerk now has it on the overhead for the board to look at.
Can I ask, is it appropriate to check with that individual? Because I mean, as I'm seeing this, it doesn't specifically say the person that is to be appointed as the acting official. Is it appropriate that we check with the individual that is potentially being appointed to make sure that they want that position to be appointed as acting official? I mean, it seems we're on the tracks right now to put someone's name on here. Should we check with that individual first before we do that?
I think it'd be more fun if we did.
Well, it's,
Madam Chair.
2025, things
Yeah,
are crazy, so.
I don't know.
It's our New Year's surprise.
I mean, yes, we can.
I assume, I mean, I can think of a number of names and they would all be totally fine with it, but I think should we at least give the individual a heads up?
I think so. Well, the person would be, well, I mean,
No, I know,
I'm
I
not
know,
gonna
the-
say, it's just gonna,
yes.
Mike Voles is
No.
the current chief
Yes.
deputy treasurer, and so
Yeah.
it just makes sense to have him become the interim.
No, and I'm not arguing with that. Should we at least check with him first before we do this?
We can get a hold of him quickly.
Okay, well,
But
that,
as the chief
yes,
deputy,
yes.
he's automatically, if we don't appoint an interim, he is the de facto person as the chief deputy.
No,
But-
Not arguing, I'm
Yes.
just, if we're taking an action related to a specific person,
Someone
it
want to
may
try to
be-
call him.
it may be a professional courtesy to let him know what it is we are doing.
You could certainly, Madam Chair, firstly, as Commissioner Kearns points out, I know you're pro-offering someone's name yet, and so you may want to take a short recess or have someone email that person to see if that person would accept the interim appointment. And then we could certainly come back into open session and we can make the motion. In the meantime, the clerk and I could clean up the resolution just a little bit so that it's reflective of the actual date, which would be Saturday would be the date.
Yes.
If that's what the board,
I think so. Do we have an executive session
Yes.
Yes, 2 executive session
today?
items.
Okay. So maybe while we're in executive session, would you be able to contact?
I will do that, and then the clerk and I will clean up the resolution so it's accurate. And then I will leave the name blank until the board makes the actual formal motion and votes on it on that.
Okay, so we will go into executive session in just a second, and then when we come out of executive session, we will continue our meeting to continue the discussion. Commissioner French.
So you said that we would make the motion effective on the 4th of July or January, but on the resolution that you've got presented here, it says effective January and a blank date at a specific time. And we will have not done that at a specific time. We'll do it today and stuff. So should that language be changed to reflect the fact that we're appointing them today and not on January 4th?
No, you just say it'd be backdated essentially.
That's what I would probably do,
We're taking
Commissioner
action,
French.
but it's effective.
I was,
There's no overlap.
Do we know specifically what time he took his oath on?
I would probably,
I don't think we have to have an exact time to.
I will clean
Well,
it up,
that's in the
Madam Chair.
resolution, that's why I was
Yeah.
saying.
Commissioner French, I will clean that up a bit.
Okay.
This was just a draft.
Okay.
You're more specific than I am, Commissioner French.
Okay,
And then, Chair, the only other suggestion I would have is that, so we come back in open session to take action on this, you're going to have to make it real clear what time we come back in open session, because we'll have to have public testimony on this particular resolution once the motion is made and passed.
yes,
Okay,
I
Thank you,
agree.
Madam Chair.
And just a question. So we're talking about the acting official today. At some point in time, we'll have some further discussion or action about the more permanent appointment. Do we want to talk about that process today or at a later time?
Certainly, it's a set process in RCW. Pat, because I believe I requested that you look into that.
Yeah, I know Mr. Maceo has the process forwards and backwards, but one thing I was gonna add that maybe isn't obvious, and if it came up, I'm sorry I missed it. But official notification to the, I guess it'd be the Republican Central Committee that the vacancy exists, anticipating, approval, just so that doesn't get fumbled.
I believe that has already happened because they've already set the date for their meeting.
I think but I think by statute, they have to receive an official notice from me or from the board, I'm sorry.
From us.
From us,
Not
yes,
from the candidate.
not from the candidate, from the board notifying them that the vacancy occurs and for them to bring forward the 3 nominations. So that's what we've done in the past. It's an official letter from us to the party.
Commissioner French, the constitutional provisions that deal with the filling of a vacancy do not address this issue that you just brought up. But as the past practice, the board has usually forwarded a copy of the resignation document to the particular political party involved. The reason the date of resignation is so critical is under the Constitution, the county commissioners have 60 days, 60 calendar days from the date of the resignation to fill the position, or it reverts to the governor, who would then have 30 additional days. So this letter of resignation, the date on it, Commissioner French, and the time are somewhat critical as we move forward, because we never know what's going to happen. So, but we will ensure, Commissioner French, that the letter, the communication goes to the appropriate party.
But the party only has 30 days from the
No.
time. I
The
thought
party
they-
has a total, let me rephrase the statute. the constitutional provisions do not address the time frame that the party has. It just addresses the total time frame that the party and the board must act. The board has 60 days from the date of the resignation to appoint someone till fill the vacancy. It's kind of confusing, Commissioner CUNY. And then if we don't make the appointment within that window, then it diverts to the governor, who has 30 additional days to make the appointment.
Just so everybody, like Commissioner Keeney said, that the party has already set January 18th as the day to bring the PCOs together to make that list of 3. So they've, which fits into the window of, they gave 10 days notice prior to holding that meeting. And so they're already kind of getting their ducks in line, so.
Madam Chair, what the board's process is still unclear, of course. As you know, once we receive the list of names, in this case from the Republican Party, to the Board of County Commissioners, the question is, then what is the board's process at that point in time? And we've done it several ways. At one time, the clerk of the board used to do it, but when she was only one person, it was taken over by your HR department. And generally speaking, we do several things. Number one, you usually do a background check, criminal background check. You have done in the past. We need to be sure we can continue to do that under the law. Number two, you've done an internet check. What's going on? See what's on the internet. Number three, you've usually asked the clerk of the Superior Court and District Court if there's any case law that's been submitted with regard to that particular person. And that's what we've done in the past. And there's one other item that escapes me. Then you get that information. It's put in packets for each one of the 5 board members. Then within this 60-day window, you generally speaking, hold an interview of all names that have been submitted to you. And the interview process usually takes place in your hearing room because the interview is open to the public. In conjunction with the interview, staff usually comes up with some questions as preliminary questions for us to give to you, and then you add to them, and then you hold your interview. After your interviews, you can go into executive session to discuss the qualifications of the individuals who you've discussed. You can't vote, and then you come out in open session and you make a particular motion to appoint the person who you want to fill the vacancy until the next general election. And in this case, the person will have to run in 2005 for the last term.
Because they have to run in the next available general election.
That's correct,
It's
Madam Chair.
prior to filing week, they will file in May and be on the ballot in August and November.
Yes.
So
So
does that answer your question, Commissioner Jordan?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Madam.
We've done this before.
A lot more than I was expecting, but good info.
So
Wow.
we have received notice, or just so everything and, you know, kind of all the boxes are checked. Should we have Gina forward some sort of notice to the county party, just so they know it's official? So we'll get you an email address or something to the chair there. So,
Yeah.
so Gina, yeah, so Gina can forward on.
Yep.
Just so all the boxes are checked, we're doing everything right, so.
So that, I mean, unless anybody has any objections to that process, that will be the process that we'll go through, and we'll have HR do all those things that you stated. It's good for each of the people that come forward. And then once we have the names, we can set a date.
I think the other item that you missed in the summary is the background check for any outstanding warrants or anything like that. That's the other element that has to be done.
That's right.
Would that be part of the background check?
It would be an interesting thing. They have to, the people have to authorize us to do a background check, Commissioner French. And of
Yep.
course, when we get the names, we'll ask them to do that. And remember, everything that we get, it's a public record. And so we will advise the candidates when they submit their information to us, this is all going to be a public record.
Yes. big binder that everybody then requests.
And a big chunk of it is usually the public comment, because we get a lot. We've gotten a lot of public comment and emails of letters of support or opposition, kind of to different, and all that's put in the binder, so. Oh, we got an email here from Bowles.
And the background with regard to outstanding warrants and stuff is not limited to just the state of Washington. It's anywhere in the United States. We did have a candidate for a position that had an outstanding warrant in Nevada.
Yes, Commissioner Frank, you're correct, and I am looking at Mr. Folsom. The law's changed on a lot of this stuff, and as the board knows, this is a legislative issue, so the appearance of fairness doctrine has nothing to do with who you appoint to this. I mean, whether you know the person or don't know them, whatever the case, it's not applicable as to this legislative appointment.
Okay, so,
Just a clarification.
You know how,
yes.
So we have 60 days to make this determination, otherwise it goes to the governor, starting on, the clock starts ticking as of the 4th.
That is correct. That'd be day one of the 60 days that you would have the right to make that appointment to fill the vacant position.
Thanks.
So approximately beginning of
Count
March,
actual days.
Actual days,
Yeah, so it might not be the 4th because you got
28 days.
February, that's a short month, and it'll be sometime in the 1st of March.
We
So let's-
received an email from Mike Bowles that said he would accept the interim appointment if that was the board's decision.
Gladly.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I'll look at you later.
it's that important to interrupt, so you just do it.
So I guess we can move forward with that
Uh,
now, so we don't have to come out of executive session, but there's a few clerical things you need to do to the resolution.
Madam Chair, I think that's correct. I think the clerk and I can make some clerical changes. The effective date would be Saturday. I would make it 12:01 on Saturday, and I forget that. Is that the 4th or 5th?
4th.
4th. I would make it that effective that day, so there's no issue about going forward, and I'd put that in whatever in the final document with the name of the person who you'd like me to fill in.
That's 12:01 AM, not PM.
AM.
I don't know,
I'm not in the
Al, which
military.
would you prefer, Al?
AM, I was awake, so.
I typed in
Thank
7 PM.
On the timing, I'm just putting this out here. I don't know if the date, has anything to do with, not payroll, but, just benefits or not. So you may need to just make sure that when he's saying he resigned on the 4th.
That's right. Madam Chair, I don't, your HR director's not on board. When someone resigns and they're not a county employee, I don't know if they get benefits for additional time frame. I don't know that.
I think benefits run to the end of the month, right?
Well,
Even if
that's
you just work one day, like
Okay.
January 1st.
Okay, so
you
then
get 'em
the
till the
time
end.
doesn't matter.
I mean, salary would probably be the only things, but yeah, we're talking less than 24 hours worth of
But he
salary.
can't have a salary.
Yeah, so
Once he's.
I don't know. The benefits though, I think technically
Okay.
would run the whole month. If you work just one day into the month, you get it for the whole month, I think. But
I don't know if that applies to.
I'm gonna leave that up to Ashley and.
There's some awesome layers.
So, because what I prefer to do is just to have this taken care of now. First, so we can go into executive session, and then we're just done after executive session. So, can we,
My recommendation, Madam Chair, would be whoever's making the motion, Commissioner Kearns, I'd like you to use the exact language in the now therefore as to the person, appoint this person to act in this capacity effective Saturday, January 4th at 12:01 AM. And then the rest of the document will clean up technically.
Go ahead and make a motion right now. Okay. Madam Chair, I move to approve a resolution in the matter of appointing an acting official to perform the necessary duties in the Spokane County Treasurer's Office until a successor is either elected or appointed as provided by law. That is the resolution. I will state that therefore, just for clarity, now therefore, be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Spokane County, Washington pursuant to the provisions of RCW 36.16.115 that the board does hereby appoint effective January 4th, 2025 at 12:01 or this PM, but 12:01 AM, Mike Bowles as the acting official for the Spokane County Treasurer's Office to perform all necessary duties to continue normal office operations for the Spokane County Treasurer's Office until a successor is either elected or appointed as required by law.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Since this is a new item that was not on our printed agenda, I do have to open it up for public testimony. So if anyone from the public would like to comment on the resolution just stated, please raise your hand or star 9 if you're on the phone. I'm not seeing anyone in the office or in our conference room. Not seeing anyone. Case, second call. Third and final call for anyone to testify on the resolution just mentioned. Seeing no one in the room and no one's raising their hand, I will close the public testimony and look to my fellow commissioners and call for the vote. All those in favor of the resolution appointing Mike Bowles as the acting official of the treasurer's office, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations to Mike Bowles. Okay, don't be so surprised. So, no, I think it's just great to get it done, you know, and since he is the chief deputy, it just makes sense for that, so. Okay, now, on to executive sessions.
If we are
If-
past the miscellaneous.
Yeah, I was gonna say, any other miscellaneous items? Okay,
Madam Chair, 2 executive session items today. They're both pending potential litigation. The first one should be approximately 5 minutes. The second one probably 30 minutes, depending on questions. At the executive session, I'd like to have CEO Scott Simmons, DPA Jim Amacio, DPA Devin Curda. The risk manager, Dan Gadd, is unavailable this morning. He'll be briefed separately, and the Board of County Commissioners.
so we're gonna go into executive session for approximately 35 minutes for the 2 items just stated. No action is anticipated.
No action.
And with no action anticipated, at the end of that 35 minutes, then we will be adjourning for the morning and we will see everybody back tomorrow afternoon. Thank you all very much. It is